When I was like 6 years old, I attended the elementary school which was located in our small town. My way to and from school was basically just 500 meters of main road before turning into the street where I lived. At the time, we were talking about the late 90s here, all the parents in town were extremely adamant on telling their kids not to trust or follow strangers. Never get into anyone's cars, even if they say they know your parents and are friends. The reason why? There was a murder like 3 years back in the same town. A girl not even 6 years old was found dead and sexually assaulted in a field. The strange thing about it is, nobody knows exactly how she was taken. No signs of forced entry or anything like that, which implies somebody lured her somewhere without her suspecting a thing. The case still hasn't been solved in more than 20 years. So our parents were very afraid that their kids were going to end up being next, because kids can be really stupid and you can't watch them 24/7. Now, onto what almost happened to me. I was walking home from elementary school. About halfway home, at the shadiest and most covered by trees and bushes area, a car pulled up to me. A blonde, about 30-ish woman was the driver. She told me that she could drive me home. She claimed to be going in that direction, which was unclear to me at the time. Essentially bullshit, because once the road ends near my house, there is nothing but empty fields. Kid-like as I was not suspicious and was like, "Oh, it's not that far, I can walk." Then she started being more insistent. The whole, "Oh, come on, it's fine, nothing to worry about, and you can relax instead of walking" thing. The alarm bells only started ringing when she said she knew my mother. They are friends, and supposedly she was asked by her to drive me home. Thank God for my parents repeatedly talking about the tricks that people use to lure you in. I started being creeped out, continued to walk, but she kept driving beside me. The real weird part in hindsight was her next attempt to get me into the car. She started saying that I was obviously afraid, and cool children are not afraid of such things. If you want to be cool, you should just relax. Honestly, I did not fully realize the full extent of this situation. I just felt uncomfortable and wanted to get out of this conversation. So I just started sprinting the rest of the way back home. Once I got home, I stayed right next to the door, looking out the window for a few minutes. And guess who drove by and basically checked out the house? That creepy woman. The road was a dead end, and only after 3 more minutes the car came back the same way. It took years until I realized what kind of bullet I dodged. All I was thinking was, my parents told me not to do this. I didn't know why or what the woman wanted. The drill of hearing over and over not to believe strangers or getting their cars kicked in. When I was older and started getting into true crime, I remembered this whole thing for the first time in 2 decades. Then I realized, holy shit, that woman was most likely sent as the trustworthy front woman to lure kids into their car and take off. It could be that she was doing this for some kind of human trafficking. Moral of the story, even if your kids are too stupid and young, like I was, to comprehend such things, the rules for not following strangers, and the fact that strangers will lie to you for evil intentions, must be drilled into your child's head, like watching both ways when crossing the street. Hi, my name is Emily. I'm 23 and live in Kentucky. So in the summer of 2018, I was sort of in between gigs to pay college, so I decided to work in a gym. I live in a small city, and for context, the gym was in the middle of nowhere, only an abandoned retirement home and a gas station plus a few miles from a Target and a CVS. It was kind of sketchy, but pretty modern and safe. In the gym there is a front desk with a narrow hallway. First floor is for men's dressing room and treadmills and weights, and third floor is for women's dressing room and everything else. One night, me and my 17-year-old colleague were the only ones left there to close, and there were a bunch of people still working out. We make the announcement about closing in 20 minutes and people start leaving. There's one guy still on a treadmill with headphones in, so I tap him on his shoulder to tell him we're closing soon. He smiles and nods and asks what my name is. I tell him my name and smile back. Then his face falls and he tells me, "Well, Emily, if you don't blow me right now, I'm not going anywhere, so fuck off, you little cunt." I'm in shock, but decide to let him do his thing until we close, because I'm scared to say anything else. I go to clean the machines with my colleagues and tell them what happened. He suggests we call our supervisor, So I do, and she tells me to just keep the gym open until he leaves because he probably won't stay for long, and we'll get paid for overtime. So we do our thing, and everyone except him leaves. Some information about the guy: he's about 6'4", broad man, black sweatsuit, and honestly not very clean cut. He also smelt strongly of alcohol and doesn't seem like someone who takes care of themselves. So me and this 5'3" high schooler are kind of scared already. After about 40 minutes, my co-worker is cleaning out the dressing rooms when I hear him coming down the stairs. He checks out and stays to chat with me. He apologizes for earlier and tells me he doesn't like when women boss him around, and then asks for my number. I tell him I have a boyfriend who's picking me up from work, which is a lie, but I didn't want him waiting around the building. He jokes about if he kidnapped me, I would be all his, and tells me he's killed someone before, a woman. I'm in shock, and he keeps talking but I'm frozen. He mentions how he owns me now and is going to watch over me, then tells me goodnight and goes down the last stairs to the front door, and I go back in to finish up, basically in tears. This is where I made a mistake. I should have instantly locked the front door, but I didn't. About 30 minutes later, when I'm left alone to close, I head down to the corridor to leave. In the darkness, I see someone crouching behind the desk, but I think it might be my co-worker, so I call out his name. He doesn't say anything. I get a little bit closer, and I smell a very strong smell. The sweat and alcohol from the guy earlier. I get a gut feeling to go upstairs and text my co-worker. He tells me he's already left and I should call the police. While I'm sitting locked in the bathroom, I hear him walk up into the women's dressing room and call out my name. I waited for a good 20 minutes before the police showed up to arrest him, and it turns out he wasn't kidding, and he had gunned down a man before. The next day, I handed in my 20 days, and only worked in malls after that. So I was on my way home from Arby's with a mint chocolate shake. I zoned out for a sec and almost didn't notice his car. I tried just letting him through, but he insisted I go on ahead. I didn't think much of it and continued walking. He drove on ahead of me and parked his car near some apartments. He had a black polo shirt, so I assumed he was dropping something off, for a job or something. As I kept walking, he approached me and offered me a $20 bill. I asked why, but I couldn't understand what he said in response. I refused since I know what's best for me. However, that didn't deter him. He grabbed my wrist and stepped to the side. He then started pulling me towards his car. I bit his hand so he wouldn't silence me and made sure to scream as loud as possible to try and attract any bystanders if I could. He managed to get me into his car. Just before he could close it, I stuck my foot in the door to keep it open. I then got out and made myself go limp. Adding dead weight without warning creates sudden resistance and makes it harder for them to grasp you. Due to this quick thinking, I was able to get away unharmed. I quickly booked it and got onto the phone with my mum. Once I was at a safe distance, I made sure to stay on the phone until I got back. After that, I'd taken some time to calm down and wait for the cops to get there to get my statement. But officers ended up praising my quick thinking, telling me that I'd luckily done everything right in this situation. Please guys, take self-defense classes seriously. I've only ever had a week-long course, and just that alone has managed to save my life. I didn't remember too much from my self-defense course, and only the basic techniques that I remembered, which was making noise and dropping my weight and checking behind me. Any other actions I'd taken were a result of logic and quick thinking. Chances are, if I'd gotten more self-defense training, it likely wouldn't have been such a close call as it was. Also, never accept money from strangers. While there are good Samaritans, there are also people who do not have your best interest in mind. If you think they do have good intentions, make sure to double check by asking them why they are offering you this money. If you don't get a good legitimate reason, then make sure you refuse. If you refuse and they still persist, get away immediately.